What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one I'm going to be going over each game this week and ahead of week 3 and going over each player that I think you guys should be looking to start or sit in your fantasy lineups this weekend. I'll be going position by position and telling you guys which guys are good starts, which guys are bad starts, and I'll sort of give you guys my explanations as to why. As always, if you guys have any really specific start-sit questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to help you guys set your lineups and all that. I love interacting with you guys there. And if there's anybody that I don't touch on for whatever reason in this video, feel free to let me know. I try to touch on every single fantasy relevant player, but if I happen to miss somebody, then feel free to let me know. I'll give you my opinion on those guys as well. So super fun making these videos. We had a really fun Thursday night game. Wasn't actually super fun, but Giants were at least somewhat competitive until the fourth quarter. Obviously, the Niners really tossed them around in the fourth quarter and won pretty handily. But good to get week 3 kicked off here. I think we've got a good slate of games here, and it should be a really fun weekend. So yeah, with that, let's just get into the first game here. So starting us off with the Falcons and the Lions. Jared Goff, I think, can be used as a really solid streaming option. The Falcons' defense is by no means super scary in terms of passing defense. They just give up 3 passing touchdowns to Jordan Love. There's nothing super scary about that. I do think you could start Jared Goff in this one, especially at home. Jared Goff's road versus home splits are pretty significant. In home games, Jared Goff is much better. So I think you can play Jared Goff here. I would obviously be sitting Desmond Ridder, and I'm probably just going to be sitting him all season. For the Falcons, Bijan Robinson is a must start. He's going to get 20-plus touches in this one, probably end up with over 100 yards and a score, and he's probably just a top 3 running back in fantasy the rest of the season. Tyler Algier can be used in the flex. I would prefer him in non-PPR or half PPR formats because he doesn't really have too much involvement in the receiving game, but he is involved on the field. He's going to get 15 to probably 17 touches in this one. Hopefully he'll be a little bit more efficient than he was last week. Maybe he'll catch a pass or 2, and hopefully he falls in the end zone, but that's really what you're hoping on for Tyler Algier. Without that touchdown, I don't think he really pays off. Outside of the running backs here, or for the Falcons, I think you can start Kyle Pitts and Drake London in this one. The Lions' pass defense is certainly not something that we're afraid of. They've given up plenty of receiving work to opposing pass catchers. Tyler Lockett just hit them up for 2 touchdowns last weekend, and they're not really a scary defense by any means. But I'm only really comfortable playing these 2, Drake London and Kyle Pitts, because of it being a plus matchup. I don't think you really have better options. I think Drake London's more of like a mid-tier wide receiver 3, and Kyle Pitts is like a low-end tight end 1, but they're not guys that I'm super excited about rest of season. For the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs is a must-start. He's obviously going to be a guy that should get 15 to 20 touches. I think he'll be much more involved with the injury to David Montgomery. It's still a little bit up in the air if David Montgomery is going to play. I don't think he's going to play here. He hasn't practiced all week, and I doubt he'll really suit up, but they haven't ruled him out officially yet. I think you could use him as a low-end running back, too, if he does play. If he doesn't, I really wouldn't want to play any of the other running backs in this one. Craig Reynolds would be the likely running back that gets some work. He'd probably see 10 to 15 rushing attempts, but it's not something that I'm super excited about unless you're just super desperate. Amon-Ra is obviously going to be a must-start. He's dealing with turf toe, but that doesn't scare me at all. Sam Laporta is going to be a low-end tight end 1 this week. He's a guy that I'm definitely looking to start. And then Josh Reynolds is a high-end flex option for me. He's really performed well over the last couple of weeks, and he is the clear number 2 passing option in this offense at the wide receiver position. He scored 2 touchdowns last week. He's a good player. He should be in lineups if you're in deeper leagues for sure. Next up, we've got what could easily be the game of the week in the game between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Minnesota Vikings. Both of the quarterbacks in this one are must-starts. Kirk Cousins is currently the quarterback 1 on the season. The Chargers defense is certainly not going to slow him down at all. Justin Herbert's been good so far, not great. This Vikings defense isn't scary at all, so you're starting both of those guys. If Austin Eckler plays, he's obviously a running back 1. I don't think he's going to play, though, and that's going to make Joshua Kelly more of like a low-end running back 2 for me. He was still really involved last week against the Titans. I know he let a lot of people down, but if he happened to get dropped by whoever picked him up last week, I think he's a guy that certainly should be on rosters, and he's a guy that you could play as a low-end running back 2 this week. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are both must-starts. Mike Williams saw 13 targets last week. He just hasn't scored a touchdown yet. I bet that changes this week. Mike Williams is going to be in your starting lineups, and obviously Keenan Allen has been fantastic as well. Gerald Everett is a streaming option at the tight end position. He looks really good whenever he's involved, but he's only playing about 40% of the snaps right now. I wouldn't love to play him, but if you're really desperate and you just want to try and get a piece of this game, you could throw him in there at the tight end spot. For the Vikings, Alexander Mattison is like a high-end running back 2 for me this week. I will be extremely concerned for him if things look bad for him in this game. Obviously, the Cam Akers signing is concerning as well. I do think Cam Akers suits up in this game, but I don't think Cam Akers will be very involved. I think we do need to understand that Cam Akers really was just effectively given to the Vikings for free. In fact, there was a clause in the trade where if he doesn't total at least 650 total yards this season, he is free for the Vikings. So I don't really expect him to be super involved. I do think that we lose that workhorse role for Madison, though, and Madison's going to take a hit going forward. But in a plus matchup and in Cam Akers' first week here, I think Madison could certainly have a bounce-back game. I think 2 scores is even a possibility here. And obviously, if he does pop off like that, you might want to try and sell high on Madison before Akers does take a little bit more of an involvement. Otherwise, though, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and Jordan Addison are all going to be must starts for me. I do think this is going to be the week that we see Jordan Addison flip his snap usage between him and KJ Osborne. He should start working as the wide receiver 2 in this offense, and he's looked really great so far. And then, obviously, Jefferson and Hawkinson are must starts for you guys in every single matchup. Next, we've got the Saints at the Panthers. I'm benching both quarterbacks and tight ends in this game. You could technically play Taysom Hill at the tight end position if you want to, with Jamal Williams and Alvin Kamara not available for this game. I don't think that there's really a world where they give any of their running backs, Tony Jones or Kendre Miller, a real workhorse role here. So I think we're going to see Taysom Hill get plenty of involvement on the ground. Maybe he'll catch a pass, maybe he'll complete a pass or two, could score a touchdown for sure. So if you want to use him as your tight end slot, as like a streaming option, you could, but not super excited about that. Chris Olave would be a must start for me. He's going to be a must start every single week. It is possible to see some Jair Alexander, but I expect Chris Olave to operate in the slot a lot in this one. We've actually seen Michael Thomas operate out wide a lot more than Chris Olave this season, and that could mean that Jair Alexander is up there with Michael Thomas, and then Chris Olave gets to operate in the middle of the field and really perform at a high level this week. Michael Thomas and Rashid Shaheed would both be potential starts for me. Michael Thomas would be like a low-end wide receiver 2, probably like a flex play, and then Shaheed would be a quality flex option for me as well. They've both been really involved. Shaheed's super efficient. He's somebody that I think you can play as a dart thrower at the flex position. I don't really want to start any of the Saints running backs. Kendre Miller would be my preferred option here. I know Tony Jones Jr. scored the 2 touchdowns last week, but Kendre Miller is a much more talented player. It sounds like he will be a full go this week, and basically gives him 1 week to prove himself before Alvin Kamara comes back. So I do think Kendre Miller should be rostered. He's got a shot here to really come out and show why he would deserve to be Alvin Kamara's 1B going forward, and he's somebody that I would definitely want to roster and just sort of see what happens this week. For the Packers, Aaron Jones is a must-start if he plays. I actually do think Aaron Jones is going to suit up in this one. It looks like he's trending towards that. If he doesn't play, A.J. Dillon would be a touchdown-dependent flex play. He's pretty much the same with or without Aaron Jones, but he's just really looked bad. He needs a touchdown to perform at a high level in fantasy, and I don't really love the odds of him scoring a touchdown against this really good Saints defense, so I'm honestly straying away from starting A.J. Dillon if I can. I'm probably sitting all of the Packers wide receivers. Dobbs would be a low-end flex play for me if Watson sits, and Christian Watson would be a low-end flex for me if he plays. I don't really think Christian Watson is going to play in this one. I think they'll give him another week off, so you could play Romeo Dobbs or even Jaden Reed as like really low-end flex plays, but I just don't love it. I'd rather just sit pretty much every single Packer this week outside of Aaron Jones. Next game here is going to be the Texans at the Jaguars. I would prefer to be sitting both quarterbacks in this one. The Jaguars are likely going to get up early in this game. That means they won't have to lean on their passing game very much. They'll probably just hand the ball off to ETN quite a bit, and that means I don't really want to be playing Trevor Lawrence, who's struggled so far. We always see over the past year and a half now that the Texans really aren't a good matchup for opposing quarterbacks for this exact reason. Teams get up early and they don't throw anymore, so I don't want to play Trevor Lawrence, and as good as CJ Stroud has looked so far, I don't want to play him yet. I just want to see a couple more weeks out of him. Nico Collins, for me, though, would be a must-start. I do think that Tank Dell and Robert Woods are solid flex options. Tank Dell would be my preferred flex option there, but Nico Collins is obviously the starter that you want to play. He's probably a top 24 wide receiver for the rest of the season. Dameon Pierce, for me, is going to be a low-end flex play. He's been super disappointing so far. I talked a lot this offseason about how I did expect him to be operating in a timeshare in a backfield that's not going to score a lot of points, and it looks like that is really what's panning out. It's really disappointing because I do think Dameon Pierce is a really good player. It's just that offensive line's awful. The offense is bad. I don't want it really to be playing Dameon Pierce if I can avoid it, but with all the running back injuries, I understand if you do need to play him. For the Jaguars, Travis Etienne and Ridley are definitely must-starts for me. Zay Jones and Christian Kirk will be low-end flex plays, and then Evan Ingram's going to be a low-end tight end 1. He's been the tight end 7 and the tight end 9 so far. He's been completely fine, not special, but not bad, and given that the tight end position looks like if you're getting some points, that's certainly something you want to be happy with. So, pretty simple here for this game, though. The next game we've got here is going to be the Broncos at the Dolphins. I think both quarterbacks are in play for me here. We've seen Russ perform really well for the first 2 weeks in fantasy. He's got 5 passing touchdowns through 2 weeks. He had over 50 rushing yards last week, and I think he's actually going to be a really solid streaming option the rest of the season. He might even be a top 10 quarterback on the season by the end of the year. I think that for Tua, he's obviously the better play here. He's got Tyreek. Jalen Waddle is a question mark for this game, dealing with his concussion from last week. So regardless, I think Tua is still in play. Tyreek Hill is obviously going to be a must-start as well. And then if Waddle plays, Waddle's obviously in your lineup. Raheem Mostert would be a high-end running back 2 for me. He's just looked really good. Devon Achane could get a little bit more work this week with Salvon Ahmed being out. So if you want to stash Devon Achane, you can do that. But Mostert's the only guy that I'm looking to start in this backfield. For the Broncos, Javonte Williams is going to be a solid running back 2 option for me. He's getting a ton of work. This Dolphins run defense hasn't been special so far this season. They gave up a lot of rushing yards to the Chargers in week 1. A little bit better last week against the Patriots, but I still think they can be beaten on the ground. For the pass catchers in Denver, Sutton and Judy are both like low-end wide receiver threes for me. Guys that you can play, but nobody that I'm excited about there. I do think you can do worse than Adam Troutman as a tight end streamer this week. The Dolphins over the last year and now a couple of weeks have been absolutely brutal in terms of their ability to defend tight ends. We've seen Donald Parham score in week 1. We just saw Hunter Henry score a touchdown in week 2, and Adam Troutman did get a goal line target last week. I think Adam Troutman could be a guy that maybe falls in the end zone this week for the Broncos if you want to stream him, but it's kind of risky. I wouldn't love doing it. Maybe he's more of a DFS play. For Marvin Mims, I just want to wait and see a little bit more. He did obviously look great on the limited opportunities he had last week, but he only ran 5 routes last week. I would be waiting to see him actually get more of an involvement in this offense. Once this offense consolidates to just being Sutton, Judy, and Mims, then I think we can start looking to play Mims in more matchups going forward. But that's about all I'm playing in this game. Next up, we've got the Titans at the Browns. This one's going to be a pretty easy game to analyze. Derrick Henry and Jerome Ford are definitely going to be starting in your lineups. I think Jerome Ford's got a really tough matchup here against the Titans, but just with how thin the running back position is, and given that you're a team that probably really needed a running back if you spent up to get him, you are probably starting Jerome Ford in your lineup. He's going to be like a low-end running back 2 for me. Amari Cooper is going to be a must-start for the Browns. This Titans pass defense has not been good at all. I think Amari Cooper's a guy that you've got to start. With that being said, that makes Deshaun Watson a low-end streaming option for me as well, but only because of the matchup. Deshaun Watson has looked absolutely awful so far. He doesn't look as mobile as he used to be. His accuracy is bad, but against this Titans defense, I think you can play him. Elijah Moore would be a low-end flex play for me, just because he did see a lot of targets last week. I don't think I really want to bank on him, but if you're in a deeper league, you could play him. And Njoku's going to be a low-end tight end 1. Now that they've lost Nick Chubb, they're going to have to pass it a little bit more, and Njoku's still a talented tight end. I'm not willing to just completely give up on him after 2 weeks. And then last week for the Titans, I think DeAndre Hopkins is like a wide receiver 3 play. He's not looking fantastic by any means, but he's getting a significant enough target share in a matchup that they should need to throw it a little bit, that I think DeAndre Hopkins can be started, but he's not someone that I'm excited about at all. The next game here is going to be the Bills at the Commanders. I do want to note that this is one of 3 games this weekend that could be affected by a potential tropical storm. We just want to keep an eye on the weather in this one. There are a couple games every year that are really severely impacted by weather, and this could be one of them. I do generally feel like weather gets overblown from a fantasy analysis standpoint, but if things are very significant, if we've got 50, 60 miles per hour winds or like torrential downpours or anything, it does impact things, so we just need to keep an eye on that. That being said, Josh Allen, James Cook, Stephon Diggs, they're all must-starts. They're definitely in your lineup. I do think Gabe Davis is a high-end flex option for sure. He really looked good last week. He's gotten really good reports out of training camp all offseason as well, and I think he's actually going to take that step forward this season. I would downgrade him significantly if the weather looks bad this week, though. He's obviously utilized downfield quite a bit, so in a game where the wind speeds could be high, ball conditions could be poor, he could certainly have a down performance due to weather, so just keep an eye on that. But assuming the weather's okay, I'm really excited about Gabe Davis this week. Dalton Kincaid would be a streaming option at tight end for me. I think he and Dawson Knox are about the same at this point, but I do prefer Kincaid just a little bit. Brian Robinson for the Commanders would be a solid running back 2 for me. The volume's just been there. He's looked really good. The Bills gave up a decent amount of rushing yardage to the Jets in week 1. I know they held Josh Jacobs and the Raiders in check in week 2, but the Raiders really haven't gotten any sort of a ground game going at all yet this season, so I don't know if that's really an indictment on the Bills or if that's an indictment on the Raiders running game to this point. For the Commander pass catchers, I think Terry McLaurin's like a low-end wide receiver 2. He's been utilized downfield quite a bit more than Jahan Dotson. He caught the touchdown pass last week. He's going to be a guy that you're probably starting. And then Jahan Dotson will be an option in your flex. I'm not super excited about him. He just really wasn't all that involved the last 2 weeks. I do think that he is going to break out at some point over the course of the season, but the Commanders are just really spreading the ball around quite a bit. It's not as consolidated of a target tree as we were initially hoping between McLaurin and Dotson, so it's been a bit of a disappointment for them so far. So you can still start them, but they're not guys that I'm necessarily like dying to start in my lineups at this point. Next up, we've got the Colts at the Ravens. This is another one of those games that could be impacted by that tropical storm. That being said, with Anthony Richardson likely out, I think for the Colts it's pretty easy. You're starting Zach Moss because he's probably going to get 20-plus touches, and then you're going to start Michael Pittman. He was heavily targeted by Gardner Minshew last week. Gardner Minshew is a perfectly capable quarterback. He's a guy that's certainly going to be able to target Pittman plenty, and I think it's definitely a guy that you want to start there. For the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, and Zay Flowers are the only starts I'm excited about. Sounds like Justice Hill is going to be inactive for Sunday's game, so that makes Gus Edwards a quality running back 2 option for me as well. I'm not super excited about that. I think in deeper leagues you could take a look at a guy like Nelson Aguilar as well, maybe a DFS play. He actually did take that step forward this last week when we saw Odell Beckham go down with the injury. Odell's probably not going to play Sunday either, and if that's the case, then we could see Nelson Aguilar operating as the wide receiver 2 in this game. In a deeper DFS, a deeper league, or as a DFS play, I think Aguilar could have a good week here, but not someone that I'm looking to start in like a normal redraft league. Next game here is going to be the Patriots at the Jets. For the Patriots, the only guys I'm really looking to start here are Ramondre Stevenson and Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry's looked really good for the first 2 weeks, scored in each of those games, and he's averaging over 10 PPR fantasy points per game, even if you remove those touchdowns. So he's a guy that's definitely got to be in your starting lineup. Ramondre, again, the volume's there. It seems like they're more and more looking just to utilize Ramondre heavily and fade out Ezekiel Elliott. Makes sense. Ezekiel Elliott just doesn't look good. Ramondre's the clearly better player, and Ramondre's a guy that's going to have a much better series of games going forward. I know he hasn't looked great from a fantasy standpoint, but the production's going to come. I think Ramondre's just a guy that you got to hold on to and keep playing. For the Jets, Garrett Wilson's like a low-end wide receiver 3 for me, and that's honestly probably what he is going to be at the entire rest of the season. He's a guy that you're going to need him to hit on a big play like he did last week, and I don't know if I really want to rely on that on a weekly basis. You can certainly play him, but in a tough matchup against the Patriots, it's not somebody that you have to start by any means. Breece Hall would be like a low-end running back 2 or a flex play, but I really don't want to play him if I can avoid it. The Patriots are probably going to load the box against this Jets offense and just dare Zach Wilson to beat him. Breece Hall still only saw the field for 33% of snaps last week. He actually got less snaps than Dalvin Cook, and he had the same number of snaps as Michael Carter. It's just really concerning to see what could happen with this offense if they're not going to give it a two-way timeshare and just make sure Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook are the only two. In this bad of an offense and a timeshare, you're really just banking on a home run getting hit by Breece Hall, and he certainly can do that, but I think I'd prefer to just bench all of these Jet running backs if I can this week. Next game here is going to be the Panthers at the Seahawks. For the Panthers, Miles Sanders is a really solid running back 2 play. The Seahawks have given it up on the ground pretty significantly each of the last 2 weeks. They've given up a total of 5 rushing touchdowns to this point, and they're certainly a defense that I'm happy targeting against the ground. Adam Thielen, I think, is actually a decent wide receiver 3 play for you guys this week. Andy Dalton should be under center for the Panthers with Bryce Young out with an ankle injury. And Adam Thielen's really involved for this offense. He caught 7 passes last week. He had a touchdown, scored 20 PPR fantasy points, and he's certainly somebody that I'd be willing to play as a wide receiver 3. Somebody that I don't think you have to start, but a guy that you can actually get away with this week. Ken Walker is a really solid running back 2 as well. He is the workhorse for the Seahawks offense. He's looked good. Obviously, the yards per carry isn't quite there, but he's being featured near the goal line. He's got a couple pass catching options as well, and certainly a guy that needs to be in your lineups. Seahawks pass catchers, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are both wide receiver 2s for me. Honestly, Lockett looks like he's just going to smash his ADP again. He's certainly someone that we've talked about a lot this season and someone that I'm really excited about playing again this week. Jackson Smith and Jigba is a nice flex consideration for you guys. He's somebody that I think you could see get dropped in redraft leagues if he has another down week. If that happens, obviously he should be rostered. You should pick him up. I think that JSN's going to get going over the back half of the season, but I think it could still be like a little bit before we see him really take off. Geno Smith is also a guy that you can stream if you want to. This Panthers defense is by no means scary. I think Geno Smith should be a top 15 quarterback this week, so you could do worse at the quarterback position. Up next, we've got the Bears at the Chiefs. For the Chiefs, this one's pretty obvious. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are going to be must-starts in pretty much every single matchup. In fact, every single matchup. For the running backs for the Chiefs, I think that whoever starts for a running back for them is going to be a really solid running back 2. It would be Isaiah Pacheco, assuming he's healthy enough to suit up, but he has missed practice some this week with a hamstring injury. If he were to miss this game, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire could actually be a reasonably solid running back 2 option for you guys. He'd be a guy that would see 15 to 20 touches in an offense that will utilize him near the goal line some, and that would make him a really high-end option for me, like a guy that I'd probably start in most leagues if Pacheco misses. For the Chiefs wide receivers, I think you can bench all of them, especially just how awkward it is seeing how many of them are involved. If you do need to start one, I think you could start Kadarius Toney. This Bears defense is one of the worst defenses in the NFL, if not the worst. Kadarius Toney is the wide receiver in this offense that gets touches manufactured for him. He saw 5 receptions last week, and maybe he could break a long one here against this really bad Bears defense, but I think they're all going to be outside my top 50 this week. There's nobody that I'd really be super excited about starting here for the Chiefs pass catchers outside of Kelce. For the Bears, I think you probably have to start Fields. I know it's really risky. The downside's super high there, but I think you could see a scenario here where the Bears get down 21 at halftime, then Justin Fields gets to rack up a lot of garbage time. He's certainly always just one big play away from a quality fantasy performance, so even though he's looked really bad on the NFL field, I think he could still be decent for fantasy this week. DJ Moore is a wide receiver 3 for me this week. He's a guy that, he hasn't really been involved enough. He was really involved in the first half last week, and that was about it. And he had 6 catches for 100 yards. He would be somebody that I'd actually be trying to sell high on if I could. But if you have him, you're probably playing him as like a low-end wide receiver 3. The matchup's not bad. He should be the wide receiver 1 for this team, so you can probably play him. For the Bears running backs, I think Khalil Herbert's like a really low-end running back 2. I wouldn't be super excited about playing him, but you can. I think you could do a lot worse. And then keep an eye on Roschon Johnson as well. He's a really good player. I think they like him as a pass catcher a bit more than Khalil Herbert. And then we could see a scenario where Roschon Johnson eventually just takes that job from Herbert. So Roschon Johnson should be on your benches if you have him, but I would certainly be making sure you can get him up off the waiver wire if he's still available somehow. Next up, we've got the Cowboys at the Cardinals. This one's pretty easy. Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb are must-starts every single week. Dak Prescott and Jake Ferguson are going to be streaming options pretty much every single week as well. You can play those guys, but for Dak, you're just hoping he scores 2 of the first 3 touchdowns for them before this game gets out of hand, and for Ferguson, you're hoping he falls in the end zone. You're obviously going to start the Cowboys with defense. They've been really great. The Cardinals' offense is by no means scary. For the Cardinals, I think James Conner's a low-end running back too. Ertz would be a streaming option at tight end, and Marquise Brown would be like a low-end wide receiver 3 or a flex play. There's nobody else in this game that I'd really be looking to start, though. Next up, we've got the Steelers at the Raiders. For this one, for the Steelers, I think Pickens is the only wide receiver you're looking to start. He'd be like a low-end wide receiver 2 for me. Outside of Pickens, I think Najee's going to be a low-end running back 2. I actually think he's going to bounce back this week. I do think he'll fall in the end zone, and I think he should be started in most formats. Jalen Warren would be like a high-end running back 3 or a flex option for me. I bet he catches a couple passes. We might see him be a little bit more involved in the offense than he was in the past, so he's certainly someone that I'd be willing to start. Outside of those two, Pat Fryermuth's going to be a low-end tight end 1 for me. I know he's been really disappointing so far this season, but they do need pass catchers in this offense with Deontay Johnson out. I bet they try and get him more involved this week against what shouldn't be a very scary Raiders defense. For the Raiders, Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams are must-starts every single week. And then Jacoby Myers will be a flex option for me if he plays. We'll have to see what happens with his concussion. I do think he'll probably suit up for this one, but it's tough to tell. If he played, he'd be like a decent flex option for me. Next, we've got the Eagles at the Buccaneers. For the Eagles, it's going to be pretty easy every single week. Hurts, Brown, Smith, and Goddard are all going to be must-starts. I know Goddard's been disappointing so far, but you've got to start Dallas Goedert. He's a high-end tight end, and obviously the tight ends have just been absolutely abysmal in general across the board, so you're not going to do much better than Dallas Goedert on the waiver wire or anything. For the Eagles running backs, DeAndre Swift's going to be a low-end running back 2 for me this week. They've mentioned they're going to take the hot hand approach to this running back room. That does mean to me that DeAndre Swift's going to get the first touches. If he continues to play well, I expect him to have a good game, but you could also see a scenario where Gainwell comes out and hits off a long run, and then you see it going right back to a timeshare. So he's a little bit risky, but I'd bench Gainwell and I'd play Swift this week. For the Buccaneers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they're going to be must-starts this week. And then Rachaad White's going to be a low-end running back 2 for me. Eagles' pet run defense is absolutely fantastic. It's going to be tough for Rachaad White to get much going on the ground, but he'll probably catch 5 or 6 passes in this one. So I think you can still start Rachaad White, and you're probably just forced to start him with the state of the running back room, or state of the running back position right now is in fantasy. And last but certainly not least, we've got what should be an actually pretty fun game, a Super Bowl rematch from 2 years ago between the Rams and the Bengals. For the Rams, Kyren Williams and Puka Nacua are must-starts. Not something I really was expecting to be saying at any point in the season, let alone this early on in Week 3. Tutu Atwell can be used in the flex spot for you guys as well. He's actually looked really good for the Rams. I think he's going to be a really quality NFL player going forward, and he'll probably see snaps even when Cooper Kupp comes back. Matthew Stafford's going to be a streaming option for you guys as well. The Bengals defense is certainly not scary, and especially if you're the Joe Burrow owner, I think it's a good idea to roster Matthew Stafford as well this week, and then if Burrow ends up sitting, you can play Matthew Stafford. Chase, Higgins, and Joe Mixon are all going to be must-starts. Despite the fact that we've got some ambiguity surrounding Joe Burrow, I still think I'd be playing all 3 of those guys. I would lean towards sitting Joe Burrow this week. You can probably play him, but if you have a better option, I'd be looking to stream the position outside of him. He probably comes in outside of my top 12 if he plays. He just hasn't looked great. He's not very mobile at all. He's not avoiding pressure, and he really isn't able to step into his throws the same way he used to be. So I'd probably, if I'm a Burrow owner, I'm actually hoping he sits this week, hoping he can just get right and get things going from week 4 on. But this is kind of a must-win game for the Bengals, given they don't want to drop to 0-3, so he might push it and be out there. But I think I would just prefer to sit Joe Burrow if I can. So that'll do it for this week's video and my start sits. I've gone through every single matchup and told you guys which players I should be looking to start and sit. Like I said earlier, if there's anybody that I didn't mention that you guys think I should have, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'll give you my opinion on those players. If you guys have any specific sit questions, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. I'll be happy to get back to you and help you guys set your lineups. You can also message me on Twitter as well if you have questions there. Up next will be my waiver wire video Tuesday morning. I know I normally do the Sunday morning live stream. I'm traveling due to it for a wedding on Saturday. I get back at like 8:30 in the morning, so depending upon whether or not I can actually get home in time for that 9 a.m. live stream, I'll try and make it, but I doubt I'll be able to, so just don't count on it. But I'll let you guys know on Twitter, and I'll post something here on YouTube if I'll be able to make it there. But that being said, really fun making these videos. Really excited for Week 3. Again, if there's anything that you guys have to ask, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you guys want to make sure that you get access to the 4 or 5 videos a week that come out throughout the course of the season, subscribe to the channel. That way you get access to all of those, and I can help you guys win your league for the rest of the season. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't.
If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.